Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie and Andrew sitting here in our post-holiday, I was going to say remembrance, but remembrance is usually something a negative. Reflection, maybe. A reflection of our holiday season. How'd your holiday? How'd everything go?
Well, it went well, I thought. I had to do some travel during that. Came back to the great old state of Minnesota.
You did. You visited Gritty St. Cloud. You visited the Granite City. We got to chat a little bit before my kids kind of all ran off in every which way. So it was good to see you, and at least air knucks, I guess, was kind of the best way to go about it.
Yes, gritty St. Cloud. That's a good. It seems like whenever I go back, and it's not as often as I obviously used to live there, it seems to get grittier and grittier on every successive visit. But that's not a bad thing. It's good to be gritty.
It's good for gritty business. I tell you that.
Very, very true. But yeah, good holiday. No travel hitches. Sun Country went well.
Oh, there we go.
First time I've flown that airline, but they do direct flights out of here. So during the wintertime, at least for snowbirds. So knock on wood, this means that a trip with zero travel hitches means that I get to make that up with like at least 2 travel delays in the future. You can't just get off free like this. Mm-hmm. But I'll take it.
Yep. There you go. I do want to share a gift from my wonderful wife. We usually have like a $50 budget. And then we have a budgeting night that we go over, and so there's not
talk about budget talk. It's like the Polad family over there.
I don't know about that.
Except the money, the billions of dollars they have, but they're just very budget conscious is where it's going.
Yes. Yeah. I do not have millions, so I do have to just keep an eye to make sure, just to make sure nothing slips through the cracks, and subscriptions are cancels that they should be, discussions about what streaming services to pick up, drop, things like that. Everyone should be a lot more open about money. Just, this is kind of my financial nerd side kind of creeping out, but just be more open about it, be more transparent, get rid of some of the stigma, because a lot of people are ashamed and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, just share your credit card numbers and social security numbers, just right. All of that, just free public knowledge.
Exactly. But so we were doing our budgets, and then I looked, and there was a gift for about $160, and Teresa was like, "That is a gift, and you are not allowed to ask questions." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, anyway, what she got me was Costco had a whiskeys from around the world pack. So it was about 24 different whiskeys from all over the world. A couple in, I think they had like 2 in the United States, 1 in Canada, some in the UK, Scotland, but Italy, Peru, Japan, Mexico, Australia. So like all over. So I'm kind of interested. I do have the first here that I'm going to nibble on.
Where are we drinking?
This is Peru, which really caught me by surprise.
Notes of coffee?
No.
Shall I guess?
No, this is actually fairly floral on the nose.
Would it be classified as either bourbon, like, because I know like Japanese whiskey is very Scotch-esque, but as far I have no idea what Peruvian whiskey, what would be the closest to it? Irish bourbon? What's your review?
Not a clue. I haven't taken a sip yet. I'm just nosing.
Don't let me hold you back.
This was going to be my lead-in for the first sip of my whiskeys around the world. Maybe for every podcast,
we're building up the drama here. I like this.
Exactly. So I'll go ahead and take a little bit of a swig.
He's taking a sniff, and he knocks his head back, and he's tasting. His nose curled a little bit, lips smacked. He delivers the verdict, and it is.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. I like the mouthfeel of it. It was a little bit more syrupy than I thought it would be. It lacking a little bit of a finish. I don't think it's. I think it's only about like a high 80s proof, so I don't think it's that hot, but lacking a little bit of a finish, but a little bit of an oak taste to it as well, but not too bad.
There we go.
So that's what I got from my wife. So I'm looking forward to taking my trip around the world, and then
how many was it? 24.
24.
So it sounds like we've got a recurring segment.
I mean, I guess. Let me know your thoughts about my whiskey reviews, and we'll see if we continue this bit.
If there's anything that we need to do is add additional minutes to this show on a
right,
weekly basis.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we only have one game to recap, and then we're going to be back next week to preview. So this is going to be a short show, right? As they always.
That's our famous last words.
Uh-huh. And then my sister got a 4-pack of Crown Royal Washington Apple beer, I guess. I don't know. It's interesting.
Is it a cider or is it an actual beer?
It says Canadian whiskey, apple, cranberry, and other natural flavors. And
so like an alco pop.
Yeah, I guess. It is. It looks like fruit punch. It is very red.
Very, very red bodied. Yes.
And yeah. So, but
I did get some good. My brother gave me a couple of bags of roasted coffee. Someplace in Brooklyn Park or Brooklyn Center does like some coffee roasting, and one of the bags was he like roasts the beans in bourbon barrels.
Interesting.
I don't know if they're like freshly wet. I don't know exactly how that works, but it's definitely got some bourbon notes to it. And so I've been enjoying that the last couple of days. If I can find the name of the roaster from the local roaster there, I'll pass that on in the next show.
Definitely. Yeah.
If you're I don't know if you're a coffee snob like I am.
Oh, a pot a day. Like
Okay.
yeah.
I've had to cut back. I'm like half a pot.
No,
I could go more, but
no, yeah.
nerves.
Teresa and I are pretty much, hooking up into our veins. Kind of like Lorelai and Gilmore Girls. You need coffee and an IV. That's pretty much us. And then, so we'll do that. And then if Teresa works from home and I'm working from home, she'll put on the mocha pot as well. And so we'll get that going and have a nice iced coffee sometime in the mid-afternoon for, kind of get away from that 2 p.m. feeling, as 5-Hour Energy ads used to say.
That's right. Well,
so
I didn't know that they roasted beans in bourbon barrels, but apparently I do, and I approve.
And you approve. Well, perfect. Yeah, let us know because I am interested. So yeah, men played St. Thomas. Before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about World Juniors and kind of where we're at as of this moment. Things are subject to change because right now we are recording in the waning third period of the Czechia-Canada game that's going on as we're recording. But as far as the United States going, how much have you been able to watch? What have kind of been your initial thoughts, takes from how Team USA is going?
So the time difference hasn't been very kind to me, as they've played a lot of these afternoon games, including today. We're recording on Thursday, and they played the quarterfinal game against Switzerland So really the only games I've been able to watch were the Finland and the Canada games, which probably were the two best games of the preliminary round. And hopefully I'll be able to watch, well, the Saturday. I'll bring up my weekend plans require me to be not in front of a TV on Saturday night. Perhaps, I don't know, because it depends on if Czechia holds on. I don't know if necessarily the U.S. will get the night game. I would assume they will anyway on Saturday, but hopefully we'll be able to see the gold medal game. Hint, hint. Hopefully, because that means that the U.S. has made it to the gold medal game. Yeah. So as far as the 5 games they've played, I've seen 2 of them. How about you?
I have seen most. I didn't see actually any of the Finland game. I was not available to watch that, but I had some family obligations that I had to attend to. But yeah, the Canada game, that was a lot of fun. And it's nice to see just so much hatred between the teams and just the undisciplined play of Canada. I mean, they were talking, I was able to kind of find a stream just actually on YouTube. If you're able to kind of sift through, once in a while, you'll find a live one that'll have it illegally streaming that you'll be able to watch. But it was good. And it was, they were talking about just all these penalties, and even the announcers were like, oh, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. That's a penalty. Even though, the crowd, and I know some of the discourse was, how Canada got screwed with all of that. And it's like, there were a lot of elbows flying and some bad hits taken and whatnot. And Canada, I think, more so beat themselves when it comes to that. And I thought they would be a little bit more higher potent offense. As we've seen this tournament, the scores haven't really shown up for them.
Yeah, again, I can't say that I've watched a ton of Canada at this tournament, but they were underwhelming to me. Their goalie might have been their best player, and the fact that they, we talked about it with Jake Baskin a little bit, where typically they go older as a team, but this year they decided to have guys like McKenna on the team who are, well young, very young. McKenna's case, he's even still qualified for U18 action. But yet they still left some guys, some notable like top 5 draft pick type of prospects off the roster this year. And it doesn't seem to be, at least with this sample size of this tournament, turning out to have been maybe the best move. It's ripe for some second guessing, I think, from Canadian fans. And in front of a Canadian audience as well in Ottawa, there it makes it that much sweeter for Team USA. Who again so I didn't watch that Finland game was right before the Huskies game, so we basically watched the first 2 periods, and then we were off to go to the Huskies game, mostly because that's when the Vikings started. And all of Howie switched over to the Vikings game.
Sure.
I don't understand. It's 35 TVs. You can't have one. We had to ask for them to get the game on NHL Network to begin with. You'd think that there would be more than just one TV there for a pretty important hockey game. But as far as the St. Cloud contingent, I've been more. We thought before the tournament started that Bernovic would have more of a role with the Canadian team. Maybe Ralph would be a guy that could be scratched in the back end. It's kind of the opposite, where Ralph's he's played every game as far as I can tell, and Bernovic's been more of a disappointment. He's been left off the score sheet. He's had some penalty or some power play opportunities in the Canada game. He had one grade A, but for the most part, he's been quiet. And he wasn't even he started playing with those exhibition games with Terrance and Swoboda, but he's really has been playing with those guys. It's kind of been frustrating from his perspective. If you're tuning in the tournament to see him in particular, you've likely been disappointed. But Ralph, on the other hand, I think has played more of a role, and he's been pretty good in a defenseman role for Team USA. From that perspective, he's been impressive.
Yeah, Brnovic has had a rough go of it, and he scored a goal in the pre-tournament games in both of them. So I was expecting him to come out hot, but overall, I felt like his decision making and he wasn't able to capitalize on some chances. So hopefully he's saving it up here for the next two games that really matter. But yeah, I would imagine it's been a little bit disappointing for him to kind of have a little bit of a goose egg here as he's going through the tournament.
And late score update for people who are listening to this the day after we record. Canada has tied it up with under 5 minutes to go. So it is 3-3. It's the winner of this game is who the U.S. gets. I think it'll be a test each way. Czechia is a team that's flying under the radar. It had a really good preliminary round and not a team you can take lightly. There's benefits from playing both of these teams. Like, it's nice to, you just beat Canada, but to beat them twice in 2 nights or whatever it is a tall task, especially being them having the host country status this year. Czechia is also a team that's going to be tough too. So it'll be a tough test. Whoever whoever USA draws here. And hopefully those St. Cloud guys can step up and get into the score sheet, eh?
Mm-hmm. So it's, looking over, you said, so your plans for Saturday, like, do you have anything going on this weekend? You said you were,
so I am
hoping to watch some games, or?
Well, in a perfect world, I would have carved out time to see all of these things, but I am going up to the Desert Hockey Classic, which has been an annual tradition for me, at least in the time that I've been in Arizona. So it's the Arizona State mid-season tournament.
Has there been a lot of mourning after their loss against the Longhorns?
I'm not sure. I'm sure.
We'll see.
Yeah. See, I bet they're in a position, unlike the other teams that lost, where Arizona State was kind of a surprise team this year. So I don't think the mourning will be as great as it would be with like Oregon fans or whoever Georgia or Boise State, I guess would be in Arizona State's case. It's like, it's nice that we made it this far. I'm not going to speak for Arizona State fans, football fans, but I didn't think about that factor. But I've been up to this hockey tournament the last couple of years, just the Saturday session. You get 2 games, and this year my dad is going to be joining me. They're
nice.
Vacationing down here this weekend, and so we're going to be heading up. The tournament this year, it's Arizona State plays Robert Morris as their sort of designated cupcake on Friday, and then Cornell and UMass play the other game. So the winners of those, we don't know who exactly is going to be playing who on Saturday. Depends on those Friday results, but those are the 4 teams involved. And I was intrigued listening to one of the previous CHN podcasts that our buddy Wodon is going to be in the building.
Hey, all right. Ask him why Crud isn't getting more play there on College Hockey News.
There's sign ideas galore. Something that can get Wodon's attention. You always have like the ESPN ones where people will make acrostics out of the ESPN letters.
Is that
you could do something? Is
that what it's called?
If it's the first letter standing for something. Some people have the ESPN, not necessarily those letters being the first letters in their little punny saying on their sign, but I'm going to call it an acrostic anyway. But I was thinking you could do something like that with Chip as being the letters.
I like it.
But I'm not sure if he would necessarily get that. I just need to have like a Wodon sign. But who knows? He's probably going to be very close to Mike Schaefer, the Cornell coach, which wherever Schaefer is, that's probably an off limits area to the Rubes like myself. So who knows if I'll even be within spitting distance of Wodon, but I'll let you know on the next show. But as I've mentioned before, this is the first time that I'll be able to see Cornell and UMass in person. I'm trying to scratch off all NCAA teams, seeing them in at least one game in person somewhere down the road. I just did that this last weekend with St. Thomas. So these two teams, I have seen Robert Morris play before, and I've seen Arizona State, obviously. But UMass and Cornell, I haven't seen either of those teams play yet. So excited to see some action in person this weekend.
Oh, nice. Yeah, if something with Chip, I think would be funny, and it makes sense that Wodon would be there if Cornell's playing. Like, why wouldn't Wodon make the trip, right?
That's right.
So, but
I mean, this is Schaefer's farewell tour,
swan song,
his swan song, season long. So he's got to find a way to visit the legend.
Yep. If you do end up bringing something, just be careful. Some of my Duluth faithful that listen had a little bit of a tough time there at the Mullet when they were bringing in a flag for Minnesota Duluth, and it got confiscated. Yeah, it got confiscated. And I think they even had to relocate because they're cheering too loud or something along those lines. And it was quite the experience for them.
I doubt that's going to be an issue for me because I'm not going to be.
You're not going to be hooting and hollering for the
opponent. No. Now, when St. Cloud plays down there next year, that might be different. We've got fist pumps here in the background. That tells me that Czechia scored.
On the power play with 40 seconds left to go in the game, Czechia makes it 4-3.
That's good.
Weird. A bad penalty by Canada. Kneeing call.
Wow.
So,
did you see the penalty? Like, what was it? A BS call? Is this going to be a talking point for Canadian fans?
Oh, it probably will be. But yeah, one time
can't call a penalty in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Especially not against Canada in Canada.
I would, and I do share your enthusiasm. Czechia is going to be tricky.
Oh, it'll be tough.
They're not an easy out.
Yeah, so. I will say though, by the way, I think I deserve some props for my Latvia. I know that they got eliminated, but even against Sweden, having that be a 1-goal game too. I was riding the Latvian train, and I ended up I think being pretty validated, even though they didn't get bronze.
Well, and their goaltender was outrageous.
Phenomenal.
I've got that's a mea culpa on myself too. And Germany had another terrible tournament, and they had to fend off relegation. Second year in a row, they had to beat a relegation game by 1 goal just to fend off getting relegated to the lower division. So Kazakhstan's back down to the lower level. Denmark will replace them next year. In the Minneapolis St. Paul hosted World Juniors. Denmark was like a team 2 years ago that had to fend off relegation into the 3rd division. They had like come back in their last game in that tournament to get, if they didn't win that game, they would have been relegated down to the C division or whatever it is. So within 2 years' time, that now they're going to be back up to the top division.
That's the ghost of Patrick Russell was able to help Denmark come back.
Make sure you get all your Great Dane references by the time of next year's World Juniors.
Yep, exactly. So let's, you know what? I'll just say it's over. It's official. Right now, Czechia did hold on for the last 30 some seconds. Ended up winning 4-3, and Canada is officially eliminated, which everybody else already knows. But you get our live reactions.
That's what you pay us,
which is worth
in the
listening.
Moment reactions.
Yeah, exactly. So
UMass, Greg Carl probably doesn't like that either because Rabel is Czechia's goalie. He probably wouldn't have made it there anyway, even if they had lost this game. But he'll be unavailable for UMass this weekend at their games up in Arizona State. Probably the most high-profile UMass guy. They mentioned that they've got a bunch of international players, like 2 or 3, I think, playing on various European teams this weekend or during the World Juniors. So they'll be without some of their personnel this weekend, most notably their goaltender.
One thing I also kind of want to come back to about Latvia is that I think I saw that I believe they had 6 NAHL players.
Didn't I bring it up? They had 2 St. Cloud Norsemen that are playing on their team.
I think so, yeah. And it just kind of goes to show you. I talk about how the CHL and that whole ruling about them, is really going to hurt. Maybe the tier 2 division or the second tier of USA Hockey, the NAHL as a path. But seeing that, and obviously it's a lesser team in Latvia, but it just kind of goes to show you for the amount of money it is to watch a game, it's really good hockey at the NAHL. So if you do have a chance to go even to some Norseman games, highly recommend it. They're a lot of fun, and obviously being at the MAC, you're right on top of the action too. So yep. It's a good time. So but let's talk some St. Cloud State. Let's talk about St. Thomas. So let's roll the recap.
Huskies and Tommies meet up for a rare Sunday afternoon contest at the Herb. Can St. Cloud complete the season sweep of St. Thomas? They'd have to do so without both Austin Bernovic and Colin Ralph, who were playing for Team USA at the World Juniors in Ottawa. Adam Ingram gets the scoring started quickly at 1:11 in the first period, getting a shot past Aaron Trotter for Ingram's long-awaited first goal of the season, and the Huskies take a 1-0 lead. St. Thomas would lead in shots 13-6 after the first period, but the game would remain 1-0 going into the third period. The two teams seem primed to repeat the result of the Huskies' season-opening 1-0 win at St. Thomas. But Cooper Gay breaks the scoring drought for the Tommies when he finds the back of the net at just over 5 minutes left in regulation. But the tie wouldn't last long, as Barrett Hall tips home a Josh Litke shot just 31 seconds later, and the Huskies regain the 1-goal advantage. St. Thomas throws the kitchen sink at St. Cloud with the extra attacker, but NCHC goalie of the month Gavin Enright stands tall, and the Huskies hang on for the victory 2-1.
Well, the Huskies ended up victorious on Andrew's return to the Concrete Cathedral. How was it being back? Was it homey? Was it everything you expected it would be? Ended up getting in the building for $10, and kids were free, so I was able to make a trip of it with the family. Ended up still dropping $90 with concessions, and the kids wanted ice cream and everything. So it, even $10 tickets, it's still, I would imagine it's still a moneymaker there for St. Cloud State. But I felt like it was actually a good sized crowd considering, Vikings Packers were on at the same time. So it, the game itself, though, it was another kind of testy, annoying game against St. Thomas. I don't think these types of games are going to go away anytime soon, just kind of with the brand that they play. But, about a minute in, let's go ahead and give a massive round of applause. Adam Ingram, congratulations. Come on down.
And there was much rejoicing.
To the score sheet. It's a welcome sight, and ends up scoring here, to kind of get the ball rolling right away. I was barely able to find my seat by the time we took a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, obviously it's been a long time coming there for Ingram. That avoided him by 2 days going the first half of the season scoreless. So the sooner that monkey was off that certain back, the better. And hopefully this activates some sort of second half, a great second half for Ingram, because it's the one missing element, the most notable missing element from this team's first half. It was somewhat of an ugly game to watch. And part of that is inherent in, as you mentioned, the way that St. Thomas plays the game. It's not I like to always point out it's not required that St. Cloud plays that style whenever they play St. Thomas. It's not like you're forced to play the other team's preferred method of play. But considering the factors that you've got Ralph and Bernovic gone, the fact that Posh's injury is still relatively new for this team, as I mentioned in the recap episode, Enright getting goalie of the month honors,
right,
from the NCHC, which is a bit surprising to me. Not that there was just so few games for the conference this in December. I guess the candidates weren't all that many. And so this isn't the team necessarily that you thought that you're going to have coming into the season, or especially the team that you played St. Thomas to start the year, because Posh was in net for that game, and obviously Ralph had the assist in that 1-0 game, the shot from the point that Rosborough tipped in for the only goal. So even the personnel from 2 months ago was notably different for this game. You did what you needed to do to get a full pairwise win, which we said was very important here. And yeah, for long stretches of that game, it didn't seem like things were clicking. But again, I can chalk that up to not only that those missing key players, but also the fact that you haven't played in a couple of weeks. And I think it's a natural thing that teams struggle to get back on the horse after a long break like this. You can say the same about St. Thomas as well. They haven't played in a few weeks as well, but playing, more of a C+ type game and still coming out with a victory and averting complete disaster, especially after St. Thomas ties it up there late. And you're thinking, God, you can't really afford even just to go to overtime and then risking how bad this team plays in 3-on-3. You really don't want this to go down as a loss in any direction, overtime or regulation. But then to get the quick response 30 seconds later was huge. And you did have to withstand that last rush from St. Thomas. I mean, that the last 2 minutes basically were all in St. Cloud's zone. And Enright had to make some big saves. He had to make some big saves in the first and second period as well.
Yeah, he had to make some big saves all game. That's for sure.
He would be my pal. I know I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but just there wasn't a ton of offensive standouts. I mean, aside from Ingram, who I thought that shot wasn't like the best shot to beat Trotter, but again, he's been snake bit all year. I'm just happy that something went in because, again, I think it's partly been a confidence issue with him. And once now that we've got that he's broken the schneid, hopefully that this will kick him into high gear here. And then the game winner is, again, not going to be a highlight reel goal either. So I'll go with Enright as my pal for this one, because I feel like this game really shouldn't have been 1-0 for as long as it was. And the main reason for that was Enright making some big saves.
Yeah, and it's going to be a clean sweep. Go Huskies woo, as well as myself. I mean, Enright, he's been just a heck of a find, heck of a story for, someone that was, contemplating just hanging it up and going on with his life, decided to come back or found a spot, I guess, to be a backup, ends up getting a chance, and just making just a hell of a effort night in, night out. I think he's been an absolutely terrific replacement for Posh. And it kind of makes me wonder a little bit about Cocaine Bear, where James Gray is going to fall kind of, the rest of the season, maybe even, off season. But we could talk about that in the future if he's going to be a transfer portal attendee. But, and right, can't say enough about his play. I thought St. Thomas had some really good chances. It felt, at least as I was watching, that St. Thomas did have a little bit better of the chances throughout that game. He came up big when he needed to. I thought some of the clears that the Huskies were doing was just a little bit sloppy. There was a couple of instances where that even created like 2 or 3 extended zone time when we weren't able to kind of clear it out, or we just need some geometry lessons of how the puck acts when it hits the boards. Like they were coming at too steep of an angle and it just was easily picked off, and kind of made me lose a little bit more hair than I would like. But at the end, we get the full pairwise. We get we kind of sidestep any really annoying, losses to teams that are, that we definitely should beat, and helped us where right now we're sitting 8th in the pairwise. Things are looking pretty good, but we still have a lot of work to do here throughout the season to make sure that we stay on the right side of this bubble.
Agree with the defensive breakdowns. I also have been noticing this from the North Dakota series as well. We saw 3 penalty kills for St. Cloud in this game against St. Thomas. They were perfect on the penalty kill. But I don't know if you've been noticing this. I feel like it's been a much more aggressive penalty kill in the last month, let's say. Whereas I don't really see them staying in a box very well. The first and second period, I was behind the net, so it's a good vantage point for seeing boxes like that. And it was more of an I formation than a box, really. And it was I think based on whoever the defender closest to the puck would make moves towards the puck handler, forcing the puck handler's moves. This can be a very effective power play, but it's kind of a high risk, high reward. I'm not saying that it can backfire on you is what I'm trying to say. They've been avoiding that kind of thing. The penalty kill was fairly decent in North Dakota, a couple power play goals he gave up there. But it's just something that I've noticed recently. I don't see that this was the case early in the season. This penalty kill has been very good all year. I still believe it's north of 90%. But that's just one thing that I've been seeing is a little bit more aggression on penalty kills in particular. And when it comes to breakouts and defensive structure, it's a little bit sloppy at times as well. And not necessarily born out of over-aggressive play, but more kind of sloppiness too. And again, that might have been without Ralph. This meant that Clark and Bufflin got action, which is maybe the first time this year that both of them have been in the lineup in the same game. So maybe just some, with the bottom 6, let's say defensemen, some adjustments playing around the absence of Ralph could have been a factor there. But as you mentioned, you've avoided a slide, and you ended up somewhat gaining in the pairwise more than I thought that you would have. Part of that was like BU had a bad loss, so some of the teams around you dropped, which helped you move up a couple of spots in pairwise, which is kind of where they've been most of the year, at least most of the time that pairwise has been quote unquote legitimate to look at. They've right been around that 7 or 8 range for most of the season. So it's nice to be there. You'd rather be there than 11th or whatever it was coming into the weekend. But still a lot of work to go. But again, like you said, this makes the task of getting enough wins to make the NCAAs. You avoided having to make up for a bad loss this past weekend by coming back there at the end and getting the full win.
One thing I found really interesting in looking at the box score, CHN has time on ice. And
it's their main criteria for chip.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest thing that I kind of took from it is looking at Josh Zinger, how the last you pick any kind of random game and he's in the high teens to even low 20s on ice time, and this game against St. Thomas only logged 9:43 in ice time. So that whether or not he's down, he was the I believe he was listed as the third pairing with Warren Clark. So I don't know if that's injury related or they're seeing what we're seeing, and a little bit of a lack of his play or of what he was built up to be, kind of coming in. But it was just really, really interesting to see his ice time really take a dip here, and something to kind of see going forward to see if that's going to be the case.
You'd think without Ralph there and kind of playing somewhat shorthanded, you'd think that was more performance based. If you're going to play a guy, strip a guy, he basically half the ice time that he did in his last game, the disastrous game up in North Dakota for him on Saturday in Grand Forks, playing one fewer defenseman for this game. You'd think that would have meant more ice time for everybody, just because you're allotting more ice time to fewer defensemen. So I would imagine that is performance based, and maybe because of the fact you were down one defenseman, that was the only reason he was still playing defense. I'm still advocating for him to get some ice time up and forward, because I still think he's got skills. I just don't think that they're really optimized at the defensive position, and think that it would be a decent experiment maybe to try him out at forward. Especially, I feel like the bottom six, you got some openings on those lines, and so. But yeah, good call there, because that is one of Wodon's big pet projects is time on ice. So good snag. I'll be sure to mention that when I bump into.
Yeah, when you see him, make sure you do, because it's something that piqued my interest. So, but it was, needless to say, Pairwise doesn't care how they get or what the margin is. The fact 2-1 victory, we kind of get a little bit off, wash the kind of bad taste out of our mouths from the North Dakota series. And then good to kind of shake some of the cobwebs off. And I think that was expected, that it was going to be kind of a little bit of a rougher series or rougher game against St. Thomas. But they got ended up on the right side. Can't ask for anything more than that. And then they've got Duluth coming up. So we will preview that. Probably just in a couple days. Actually, we'll probably get that released out early next week. So
yeah, the new year kind of screwed us all up with our schedule. So we were thinking about do we just do one episode? But we've got a lot on tap. We want to do a pick the field episode next show and properly preview both the men's and women's series up in Duluth next weekend. So we'll have another show. Probably be available Tuesday of next week, we're thinking. So stay tuned in that. And I did quick run the customizer, by the way, just to see if they would have lost this game in regulation, 14th in Pairwise. So pretty big swing. That's just with the regulation loss. I didn't do it for like an OT loss, but you can imagine it would not have been good. And you would not be at 8th if it weren't for any result other than a full regulation win that you were able to do.
I've been kind of keeping track of the Pairwise. Well, first and foremost, anything more you want to add against about the St. Thomas series? We already did the POWs, so we're good there.
No, let me hear about your Pairwise thoughts.
It's just kind of as we're looking, because especially I've always been kind of a fan of January is when you can first start looking at it. I've been swayed otherwise, rightly or wrongly, but I was just kind of wondering on your thoughts about some player or some teams that have kind of surprised you of where they're at. Just kind of like seeing that kind of the trajectory that I was a little bit surprised that Providence has kind of steadily risen from December to where they're at now, sitting at 4th. That was a surprise, but also Wisconsin. They were the butt of a lot of our jokes, but, being 42nd when December started and now up to 23rd is quite the rise for them. Is there any real Pairwise? Western Michigan has been in 5th all month. Just kind of looking around the landscape in general. What are you thinking? Is there anything that kind of sticks out to you as a little bit of a surprise of where they're sitting?
You mentioned Providence. They're a team I would certainly not peg as the 4th best team in the country. Part of that is the Hockey East's overall success, just kind of supercharging Hockey East team's performance. I think you could put UMass Lowell in that same boat, who at 10, I'm not exactly sold on them. Same with New Hampshire at 13. These are all tournament qualifying teams at this point in the season. And with 6 teams currently in the field, you feel with second half being almost all conference play, that's going to level itself a little bit out. I still think they're going to have a very good year at the end when the dust settles here, but anything over 5 teams would surprise me from Hockey East. And certainly I would think a team like Providence is going to fall more into like the 2 to 3 seed range rather than the 1 seed range at this point. But that's definitely a surprise. I mean, New Hampshire, I would not have expected to be 13th. I think, again, that's part of the Hockey East being so good that they've buoyed them to the level they're at. Ohio State, we've mentioned being maybe skeptical of their success so far. I've mentioned I was playing around with a little bit today because we mentioned UConn at 500 record. They were at 15th, I think, the last show that we did. They're down to 18th now, and still at 8-1. So I was kind of looking at them and other potential Wisconsin rule candidates, because again, if we're talking about how good Wisconsin rule update. You had your finger hovering over the button, I bet, once I brought up the 500 record thing.
Well, 100%. Any excuse to use that one, I'm definitely going to do it.
And I even lumped Wisconsin into that as well, because they were at 20 when I looked this afternoon. They actually played a game here tonight on Thursday, and they lost a 1-goal game to Michigan State. If they would have won that game, they would have bumped up into the teens at least, and they even with a win tonight, or they would have made it a 500 record. They're at 9-11-1 right now, so that would have been 10-10. But the big thing with Wisconsin is it got 5 overtime losses, so 2-5 in overtime. So technically they're 7-6-1 in regulation. Well, 7-6 in regulation games, I guess. So that maybe explains, plus the fact that they've played in a tough conference. At least from the Pairwise perspective, that kind of can explain why Wisconsin is that high. I've seen some chatter on Twitter about why Long Island is as high as they are. I do think my hypothesis is correct on this one, is that they play so many road games, and one way to game the system Pairwise in an unintentional way. Teams like Alaska from a couple years ago that flirted with an at-large bid had the same sort of formula where they played a heavily imbalanced schedule when it comes to road versus home games. I think Long Island's only played like 4 home games. And while they really haven't had a quality win this year against a current Pairwise qualifying team, they just have avoided bad losses, and they've played a ton of road games, which does help jack up their RPI. So I can sort of explain some of these away. I would say one of the ones that I was surprised at is Princeton at 20. They're not a team generally that you think of in terms of Hockey East as being a contender. I could say the same thing about Dartmouth, who's cooled off from their hot start. Princeton, I guess, is as high as they are based on a sweep of Ohio State in non-conference play earlier. And they're a team with ECAC currently having just one team qualify. That's Quinnipiac at 15. But they've got teams like Cornell and Dartmouth and Princeton, Clarkson as well, kind of hanging around there. I don't think ECAC is going to be more than a 1-team league this year. But you've got to, I think, lump in Princeton in that conversation as well, which is, they seem to be like once every 5 years. They're like, oh, we kind of blink and Princeton's in the conversation. And then they've resumed to being a team that's muddled in the 50s in Pairwise the other 4 years, and then you forget about them. And then, they pop up this year, and it looks like they're going to be competitive somewhat this year. So they'd be a surprise. What else do you got?
Well, I was just also wanted to check in our favorite USCHO voter with Brown. Obviously, they were 43 and now up to 37. So, way to go,
Look out.
Brown. Yeah,
Look out.
definitely in the top 20s, and can't wait to see where they end up. And then the other one that kind of surprises me, and they've been hovering around this area here, is looking at the CCHA at Minnesota State. Obviously with the turnover with Hastings and a lot of people fleeing, they've been able to really kind of weather that. And obviously adding a Pitlick kind of helps that. But, they're sitting right now at 13 and kind of stuck right there as the only CCHA on the good side of the bubble, or really anywhere near the bubble. The next closest is Michigan Tech. They're at 29. So, it's that's one that's been maybe a little bit surprising, but if they stay kind of on the right side, CCHA might be kind of a sneaky 2-team conference, and that's definitely gonna be really interesting for some of the bubble watchers. People are gonna kind of end up around that area towards the end of the season. I think that has a big chance to be a spoiler.
I would kind of put them in the ECAC camp, where I feel like it's going to be very difficult for them to get more than one team in. If Minnesota State loses in their playoffs, that might be enough for them to dip out of at-large territory.
That's true.
But we'll see. I mean, you could, again, say the same thing about a team like Quinnipiac, or let's say whoever the highest-rated team in Pairwise in ECAC is. Is it going to be enough for them to hang on? Sweating it out on Pairwise Saturday prior to the selection show, to see if they can hang on to a at-large spot. It's not a position that you'd want to be in if you're a team like that, but we'll see. I wanted to, so the Wisconsin rule that I brought it up, I would say our best. I think it's very difficult for it really ever to happen. The reason we haven't seen it since 2008 when they instilled the rule. I think our best chance this year is actually Boston University. You got to think of a team that's currently in the gate.
Sure.
Because like your UConn at 8-1 and they're at 18th. How are they really going to move up? They would have to go under 500 for the rest of the year and still move up 5 spots or so. That's pretty close to impossible. Whereas BU, certainly on the bubble, they're at 12, but they're 9-7-1. And because they play in Hockey East, they've got a killer schedule the second half. They play BC twice and maybe 3 times, depending on, they could meet in the Beanpot as well. They also play Providence 3 times, and then they also play New Hampshire 3 times. Those are all teams. I mean, Providence is 4th, BC is 1st, UNH is 13th right now. So you're playing a lot of these high-end teams, which means that losses to those teams that I just mentioned aren't going to really kill you as much as, teams in a regular conference where you're playing average teams. Relatively speaking, you're not playing the number 1 team 3 times coming down the stretch. And the other big thing too,
the Wisconsin rule went into place was the WCHA was absolutely so stacked that year that Wisconsin was able to get in with that type of record. 6
teams got in that year in a 10-team WCHA. So whenever you have a league that's going to get more than half of their teams in, we saw this with the famous Lowell Sun Sports editorial, which is now lives on as the Foot and Mouth Award. That was based on St. Cloud's near 500 record in the 14-15 season when the NCHC got 6 teams out of 8 teams in that league. Again, that 6th team of those qualifying teams is going to have a record right around 500. We saw that with Duluth a couple years ago too, when they snuck in. St. Cloud kind of helped them out that year, but they were a team that was flirting with 500. But NCHC was very good that year, and so that's when you're going to have this scenario present itself. And this year's Hockey East could also present that self. And if we are really fans of the Wisconsin rule, the one thing we should root for the most is overtime losses. Because the way that the Pairwise is structured now, where you get a benefit from a Pairwise loss, from the overtime loss, that overtime loss counts in the whatever I said for Boston University 9-7-1. That would count as one loss there, and that's the record that they use for determining if you're over 500 or not. But it also it benefits their pairwise because it's closer to a tie in the pairwise if they're getting an overtime loss. So that's why you can gain in pairwise, but also become closer to going under 500 with overtime losses. So we should root for a lot of overtime losses, is what I'm saying. And let's make it happen.
Yep, exactly. That year was 2008 when the Wisconsin rule was born, came into existence, or the rule wasn't in existence, but that's when Wisconsin made it.
It was instituted the next year at the coaches' meetings.
Do you remember who won the tournament?
The overall, the NCAAs, or the 08 was Boston College?
That is correct. And the WCHA actually only had one team. Well, I guess two if you count Wisconsin against Denver, and Wisconsin, where the rule was founded, actually ended up winning against Denver. They got in as a 3 seed.
We've mentioned this before. They get in as a 3 seed. Do you know where that they played an in-conference opponent in the first round, which almost never happens? I think that's the last time it has happened. And do you know where that regional that they played was at?
Oh, I have a good feeling. It was a Providence in Providence situation. It was Wisconsin. It was in Madison, wasn't it?
I think it was even better than a Providence in Providence because it was literally at the Kohl Center, I believe, at their campus rink. At least when Providence plays in Providence, they played at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, which was not where the college plays. But yeah, so they get they're under 500. They get a home regional, and they get to face a conference foe in the first round. And they almost beat North Dakota in the regional final. I think they had to go to overtime.
Yep. And then that was, so North Dakota was the only team that ended up making it to the Frozen Four. And they ended up losing, they handily lost to Boston College. They lost 6-1 before, really Boston College actually kind of walk through that.
Was it BC over Notre Dame?
Correct. Yep. 4-1 in the title game. Their closest game was against Boston College against Miami. And that was a 4-3 overtime win in the regional finals in Worcester.
In 08, that would have been the dreaded Clarkson year.
That is the dreaded. Yep, that was the dreaded 2-1.
I mean, it's at this point, Air Force and especially AIC have far dwarfed. The Clarkson game is like a footnote at this point, but at the time, that was maybe the most embarrassing loss in the tournament to that point. I mean, they were the 2. They were the higher seed, correct?
Yep,
they were 2.
I think that was the first time we were the higher seed. Well, or not the first time we were the higher seed, but the
that would have been the Michigan game. They would have been
the Michigan
seed. That was
with the higher seed.
6-team regionals. Or
12.
It was 3-team regionals. They had the one. Yeah, so they played Michigan. They had the bye into the semifinal.
Yeah, that was in Albany.
Clarkson, yes.
Yeah, so
either that or Rochester, one of the two.
I want to say it was Albany, but it's So that was, but I remember also the discourse was, we have always had to go out there. Like we weren't in the Madison regional at that time. We've never had a regional game. We've always had to fly out somewhere else, and they couldn't have a regional close to us. And when we did, we ended up beating Northern Michigan. So
they played the year before at 07 against Maine. That was in Rochester. And then
that was the Ben Bishop year.
They played Albany in 08 against Clarkson.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, but We have better memories in Allentown, I guess is what we're trying to get at. So that's where we're hoping St. Cloud's going to play this year, right?
We've got good memories in Toledo, right? And they play a regional there this year, so maybe we'll rekindle the Toledo magic.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of sleepwalking through a regional, St. Cloud really had a easy regional. I remember, I can't remember where I was watching that championship game. That was against Miami, wasn't it?
Correct.
Or the regional, and I just remember watching
final.
It's like
they played
the regional final.
Notre Dame,
and just thinking, God, it's not really this easy, is it? Like we're going to the Frozen Four. And St. Cloud, even we were a bubble team at that point.
That was the year that he had to sweat it out because they lost to Wisconsin in the last WCHA Final Five. Joel Rumpel, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so he had to sweat it out there. And I remember it was like BU was involved. I remember watching the Hockey East playoffs that Saturday because I think BU was like, they needed to lose and they did. There was a couple of teams, like I remember having to watch that Hockey East final and rooting for whoever ended up winning it. Because if BU or whoever the losing team, if they would have won, that would have knocked St. Cloud out.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they were 4 seed and they made it to Pittsburgh.
And we were we won the WCHA that year?
Well, that was the infamous Patulni's.
That was the Patulni's
so they shared the McNaught.
They shared, yeah. So,
but we were the number 1 seed in the playoffs, so technically we did win on points or on tiebreaker.
On tiebreakers, but our non-conference was pretty
terrible
bad.
Non-conference.
Yeah, so. I remember I think I've told this story before, me getting drunk with the Northern Michigan coach.
Michigan. You
at
have
Old
shared
Chicago.
That story.
I have shared one of my favorites too. God, that was. I miss Old Chicago. I will say that.
I think they miss you too.
I bet they do. I bet they do. House of Pizza just isn't quite the same. Let's get to some question. What record do you think the Huskies will need the second half to get into the tourney? How many wins do you think that the Huskies need here at the remaining schedule?
I think I mentioned on a previous show, would have been obviously before the St. Thomas game, but I said you need at least 500. So you got 16 games left. That's 8-8, and obviously ties and overtime results skew it. But let's just keep it simple. Let's say 8-8. I think if you make it 8-8, then you're 19-16. You probably want at least one more. Let's say 9-7. I think that for sure gets you in.
Yep.
8-8 might do the trick though too.
Sure. I think maybe a little bit more. And again, depending on who those losses are to, more so than who those wins are to. Like if we go 1-3 against Minnesota Duluth, or even lose a majority, like an overtime loss and a straight loss against Omaha, like that's gonna tank. That's really gonna hurt us. So, but we have those losses against Western Michigan and Denver. Maybe not as much.
Or if you lose those games and then you sweep Denver and Denver, it might balance each other out.
Well, we got to call up some guys from UNLV, I think, is what we need to do to make sure that Denver...
I don't know why we skated by. This is like
how do we go this far without mentioning the UNLV beating Denver in a shootout 6-5, but
7-6.
I'm sorry,
short changing them there.
7-6. You were able to, it's just not going to make me feel good knowing that, St. Cloud's never going to put up 7 goals in a season, or not going to put up 7 goals in a game this year. And sure enough, UNLV does it against the defending national champions. And sure, you can say, Bouillon and Carl are out, coaching Team USA, and now we're rooting for them, but quite the turn and quite the surprise there for a club hockey team to come up and do that, and then lay a huge egg against Colorado College.
So I did call that too.
Yeah,
I saw
Colorado
that.
College probably took that game maybe a little bit more seriously, seeing all the turmoil that went into, or all of the ragging that everyone did against Denver. They were probably, we don't want to be the butt of this joke.
Yeah, I don't want to look too much into it. It was an exhibition game. If it actually counted for Denver, it would not have been the result that it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to even get into your upset language. I don't know if this was a surprising result. Again, I can't even say that because it wasn't really a game.
It wasn't a game.
It was just a funsies kind of deal. And yeah, you can say that it's not like Denver was resting all their guys. Matt Davis gave up 4 goals, and you'd like to think too that you'd like to read into that and say, well, Matt Davis just, he's not a real serious goalie for a national title contender. Well, that didn't matter last year when he was kind of sleepwalking through most of the year and then just snapped his fingers and became Ken Dryden in the tournament. So it's not something that you can really take any sort of extrapolate anything from this game and say that this is going to be the Denver team for the rest of the year, or this is the real Denver, or that UNLV is like a great team either. Like I said on Twitter, the upshot, the most positive impact of this game is if this convinces UNLV to bump up to D1 NCAA. If that moves that needle even slightly, I'm all for it. And I wouldn't be shocked if people in that program are saying, kind of licking their chops and saying, I think we can do this. That would be great. They're within driving distance of me. And so if they go D1, I'd be happy to take a trip out to Vegas and watch a couple of hockey games. I'm sure I'm not alone in that scenario.
It'd be a popular road spot, that's for sure.
Yeah. And they are a good club team. I did catch a Arizona club hockey game a couple of weeks ago, and they are in the same conference as UNLV is, who they lead that league. UNLV does. And so they're, I think, within the top 5 teams and whatever the Us Show version of club hockey rankings are. They're a couple spots below Ohio. They're the number 1 team currently in club. And I didn't know St. Cloud's club team is actually D2 club. I thought they were D1 club, but they're actually D2 club. It's like 3 divisions of club. It's a whole big deal. Some people really get into it.
Well, I know there's actually some places like down in the Sunbelt area, like I want to say even like Alabama, they'll get like a couple thousand people per game. Liberty
plays their games on ESPN Plus. I've actually watched a couple of their games just out of curiosity, not the entire game, but I'll just check in. They've actually got good crowds that are into it. And they're another team that's been like ranked in the club ranks in the last couple of years. Weird, like you'll have teams like Arizona or Alabama, Florida, Oregon, these big name universities will have a club hockey team and they'll be decent. But then you'll have teams like Minot State, who's the team that played Arizona, the game that I caught, who's a powerhouse at club level. They're really good. Central Oklahoma is a really good club team. So there's some of these schools that they're just huge schools that they kind of, hey, here we'll throw a bone to our club hockey team. And who really cares if it's good or not? And then there's some schools that say, hey, we're going to just throw all of our eggs in this basket of club hockey. Nice. And this is how we're going to make our name in athletics, which is, I think, a weird flex. But I'm for it.
Well, let's move it up. Let's do it. So, next question. What are your predictions for the bye week? Road win on Friday, then mail it in on Saturday. I would say I'm confident we're going to come out of this really well. I don't know how Craig Dahl would say. I know he kind of hopes for a split when we're on the road, when we're on a bye. But I would say I like our chances.
And we've been better on Saturdays this year. So I would say you lose on Friday and then you win on Saturday on the bye weekend.
Overtime result on Friday, win on Saturday. So.
Win plus.
What do the Huskies need to focus on to beat the Bulldogs next week? And is it a must sweep? So we'll get into the Bulldogs game a little bit more here in the next couple of days. Is it a must sweep? No, but it's it's a must.
It's a
get
must.
Positive
It's a must
results.
split at the very least. You can't get
Yes.
swept.
I would say must split plus.
I think a split would be fine. You might drop a spot or two, but a split on the road, even though Duluth's not great, it's not going to sink you. A sweep, as we saw last year when you got swept up in Duluth, that will sink you. But a split would be fine. But so I would say you got to win at least one regulation game next weekend.
Yeah, and then also news came out about Will Francis, and he's going to be out the remainder of the year. So best wishes to him in his ongoing battle with leukemia. So that's going to be a tough one, obviously, for the Bulldogs, but also for him and his loved ones. So our thoughts are with him and so. Can we expect any sort of boost from Bernovic and Ralph after coming back? I think Bernovic will probably have a little bit of jump. World Juniors is definitely a different type of tournament where I think the pace is a lot faster. I mean, this is the best countries have to offer at that age range, and it's an incredibly fast-paced game, and I think Bernovic's maybe having a little bit to adjust to that. But I think him coming back, I actually expect him to keep up the pace he has been, maybe even exceed it a little bit, because I think he's going to be this game is going to look maybe even a little bit slower to him. And he's going to find some of the softer spots of the ice and really press forward and be even more of a force than he has been. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to be like coming back.
And if anything, if Bernovic's maybe underwhelming World Juniors might propel him to sort of, hey, I belong there. Let me show you. Like it could work in terms of, hey, he's still got 2 games left. He could turn into the talk of the tournament here in the most important games. But to this point, I'm sure he's wanting to have had more success in the World Juniors to date, and he could use that, like I said, as fuel. You could say the same thing about the Duluth guys too. That Kleber and Plant will be coming back from the World Juniors for this next series. So they're going to be in the same boat as guys like Bernovic and Ralph are. It is nice that there's going to be a week between the World Juniors. Because remember, there was one year that Peart played in the World Juniors that they brought him back. I think they lost they didn't make it to the title game one of those years. I think in both of the years he wasn't on the 21 team.
Yeah.
So he would. So the one year would have been 23 then, because the 22 one was in the summertime. So I think the 23 year they rushed him back. I think they played him like a day or two after he came back, and that's never ideal. You don't want to rush a guy. Whereas here you've got at least 5 days between, and it's Canada. You're coming from Canada too. It's not like you're coming from Europe. Got any sort of jet lag issues. So it's nice that from both team's perspective, because they've both got 2 players represented here at the juniors, it's nice that they've got a full week here to decompress from that, I'm sure, whirlwind experience, and then also get some time to focus back at the task at hand here the second half of the season for both of these teams here. So I like that aspect. You're not rushing anybody back, and you're not overexposing guys, having Ralph and such play another 2 games on top of the 7 or whatever games they play for the World Juniors right there all in a row. So I like the scheduling. I was going to mention too that Wisconsin-Michigan State game that we mentioned is going on as we were recording. What is the Big Ten doing scheduling conference games during World Juniors weekend? Like they're a conference that generally is pretty well
prides
represented.
Themselves. Yeah.
And, Michigan State had to play without Augustine for this game, was their starting goaltender, number 2 team in Pairwise, and Wisconsin's got Hensler as well. That's missing. You think that this would have been avoidable schedule quirk from the Big Ten. But nay, apparently.
No, exactly. And then I think also the same for Ralph. I've been overall impressed with him. And I think, against this competition, I think it's only going to propel him further, over the rest of the season. It's kind of interesting that, we talk about how great the goalies have been. And it just feels like our defense isn't as tight. Like, we don't have that, kind of standout, I would say, defenseman on this. I mean, Licky and Wiley, I would say are B+ defensemen. Licky sometimes a C+. Wiley, I think, is a little bit more consistent. But it's just interesting, maybe I got to look at this defense in a little bit more of a kinder light, considering average goals against is, 2.06 on the season, which is, I've always thought goals against were a team stat. And, it's, a lot of the credit does go to the goaltenders, but I don't know. It's something I'm going to definitely look at more. I do harp on the negatives a little bit much when it comes to defense, especially not clearing the zone when it needs to. But just something that I kind of looked at that kind of surprised me, because I know a lot of people are, I saw some people online talking last year saying that Pierce loss was going to be a bigger impact than people expected, and I am not really missing it here this year.
Yeah, and I always felt that I was the roughest on Peart to an extent where I sort of put the kid gloves on whenever I would talk about him. So yeah, we've talked about in the last month or so some leakage by the defensive core. And it's something that does tend to slide under the radar. Posh did a really good job hiding that or papering it over with his good play this year. Now that that's no longer a factor, and yes, Enright's been very good of late, but still something, and we mentioned Zinger's issues. I've said that from basically the start of the season that I like Ralph the best out of this group. We'll see if that continues in the second half. And guys like Wiley and Licky, yes, they've shown some good, they've shown some bad. Yeah, it's an important unit on the team, and I would like to see some more consistency based on just those basics that you're talking about, breaking puck out, things like that.
And then Eric also asked favorite Duluth spots. We can go into get that on our next podcast as well. I got a couple of recommendations for Duluth. I was actually just up there having a little bit of a summer getaway with my wife here this last summer. It was it's a beautiful spot. I won't say a lot good about UMD, as everyone knows, but I think Duluth's a pretty cool town. And then last one is Dan Jacobson. When is the new Switch going to get announced? And I don't know if you have any thoughts about the new Nintendo Switch, or if you just want me to take this one.
I've been hearing that there's a new Switch that's going to be released. And the birdie in my ear is telling me sometime in 2025.
There we go. So, I agree. It's really interesting because all of these leaks are coming out and rumor mill is churning, and I feel like Nintendo would try to release information or a trailer about it sooner if these leaks were not true, to try to temper some expectations. But a lot of things seem fairly promising about what the next Nintendo console can do. That's going to have about PS4 or PS4 Pro graphics ability, 4K DLSS with an NVIDIA chip, and that's all really promising. And people are saying, oh, it's still a system behind. The PS5 is out. It's like, no games are being released for the PS5. It's all being cross compatible with PS4, and even that, there's not a real reason to upgrade that, where the Switch is definitely due for an upgrade. So I am interesting. I do think it's going to come with Mario Kart 9. I think if they release it with Mario Kart 9, I think it's going to be a huge a system seller. And then maybe even a re-release of Smash as well on top of that. But so I would say we're going to probably get something here by the end of January even. And that's when we're going to at least get maybe like a 2-minute trailer and then a upcoming direct about it in the next month and a half when it comes to more details. I think they would like to release more information before the end of the fiscal quarter of March. And then they could have it and aim for a summer release. So that is kind of my thoughts on the Switch too.
Yeah, I agree about the limitations of the PS5. The thing that I think has always been overhyped when it comes to that is, the FR562S card being incompatible with the other capabilities, and the lack of the cross fertilization of that seems to limit its utility. And the fact that
not enough people talk about cross fertilization. You're right.
And the UI. I mean, we're really stretching things when it comes to the UI. So I'm in your camp. I'm hearing more like March.
Okay.
So I wouldn't get your hopes super up by the end of this month.
Nintendo. So my uncle works at Nintendo. That's what he said.
My neighbor's stepdad works at Toyota that's next to an Xbox plant. So he's plugged in.
That's ideal if that's where you want to get your info. So
Jeff knows.
We'll be back in the next few days. Thanks for tuning in, and that about does her. So I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR More Clappers. I'm also Weldie at Blue Sky. And Andrew, where can we find you?
At Andrew SCSUHHP Mosey for Hobie. I got it this time.
There you go. Got it first try. So until next time, go Huskies. Woo!